My name is Rebecca Hamilton. I am 44 years old, and I was diagnosed with portopulmonary hypertension December 20th of 2015. From my understanding, portopulmonary hypertension is diagnosed when someone has chronic liver disease, and somehow that affects the cleaning of the blood. So they believe that liver disease has caused the problems with my heart and my lungs. I was 41, and I had just given birth to a little boy on December 7th, 2015. And what seemed like a normal pregnancy, a normal delivery, other than the fact that I had to be put under general anesthesia due to low platelets, which is something that often happens with liver disease patients. I had to be put to sleep to have him, and I had my fourth C-section and went into recovery, had a normal hospital stay with a newborn, and was released back home with the rest of my family about 3 days later. When I was discharged, I noticed I started getting some swelling in my ankles and my feet. And that had never happened before in any of my other pregnancies. Again, this was my fourth one. So I thought that it was very strange because I never had that problem. And I noticed that I was just, really tired and kind of lacked energy. But my doctor just basically said it was, just extra fluid from having the baby, and put me on a Lasix to try and get the fluid off. So he sent me home after I had my 1 week follow-up and put me on a Lasix for a week. And then I came back to his office, and basically the swelling hadn't gone down, and I was becoming more and more short of breath. It was around Christmas. We had gone to a family function, took the kids to see Santa, and I had to climb these stairs into the Cleveland Browns stadium, and I couldn't make it up the stairs without taking breaks. The next day, I went back to the ER, and they got me in immediately. The first test that they decided to do was an echocardiogram. The tech came in to do that test. I'd never really had one of those before and didn't really know what was kind of happening, other than I thought they were looking to see if I had a blood clot. As we're waiting there, 3 or 4 doctors came into the room and said to me and my husband that I had pulmonary hypertension, and I didn't even know what that meant because I'd never heard of it. They basically just said that they were very sorry, that there was no cure, that some people go on to have a heart and lung transplant. So, of course, I was just completely overwhelmed with the amount of information that was coming at me within the matter of an hour of being sent to the emergency room. And from there, they told me that I would be admitted to the intensive care unit at that hospital, and they were going to start me on some medications and do right heart cath, and all of these things just being thrown at me. And I was shocked, overwhelmed, sad, and I thought, I'm dying. Well, unfortunately, I had a setback when I started the medication. I was at a local hospital in my town. It was a smaller hospital, and they were just actually starting a pulmonary hypertension department there. So there was about 3 patients total that they had even worked with that had pulmonary hypertension was diagnosed. So it was fairly new to them. And when they started me on IV Veletri, is what they put me on, I had some hypotensive issues in the ICU, and I had some adverse reactions where my blood pressure dropped to 58/12. And at that point, they were bringing in crash carts and talking to my husband on whether or not I was even going to survive it at that point. My husband immediately put in for a transfer to Cleveland Clinic main campus in Cleveland, Ohio, and they transferred me on New Year's Day. And from there, I was monitored more closely and stabilized, but I remained in the ICU for 20 days. And I was having some arrhythmias, again, low blood pressure issues. They finally got me stable, and I was able to titrate to a good point to where I could then be released. But I was in the ICU for 20 days, and it was very traumatic. I suffered from some post-traumatic stress disorder after having my son, and then all these things happening. Just, ICU deliriums. It's been quite an adjustment because I did get post-traumatic stress disorder after some depression and some severe anxiety over the whole situation. So it was horrible at first, but once I finally got to go home and settle into my new normal, I did a lot better. However, it was a struggle for me because what I thought was going to be a happy time of my life, I went out on medical leave, to have my son and was going to return back to my career. All of that changed in the blink of an eye. So we were hoping that I would be able to return to work, but my pressures upon diagnosis were in the high 90s, and I was considered very, very severe. So I worked for end-stage renal dialysis. I was a financial coordinator, insurance coordinator. I took care of about 900 patients who were on end-stage dialysis, waiting for kidney transplants, and I applied for grants and did Social Security disability paperwork for all of these patients, and I worked there for 15 years. I had assumed that I would be able to go back to work and everything would be fine, but unfortunately that didn't happen because I was still having quite a bit of problems. So I went out on my company's short-term disability, and then I switched to long-term disability while I filed for Social Security disability. With Social Security, unfortunately, if you're still getting paid from your employer, you're not considered disabled. So I had to make the decision to allow them to terminate me, which took about 3 months. I was completely on long-term disability and then was able to file the Social Security disability paperwork, and unfortunately was denied, even though I was on an IV therapy and my pressures were, in the 90s, and I couldn't really do anything. Walking was exhausting. Climbing stairs was exhausting. There was no way that I could drive and cover 16 different clinics doing what I was doing in the past. So I had assumed with my condition the way that it was that I would get approved. And unfortunately, I was denied. So then I appealed it. The appeal was denied. Basically, my next opportunity would be to go in front of a judge and plead my case, which took 2 years. So I was just waiting and waiting and waiting to see the judge, hopefully get approved. In those 2 years, I was getting paid supplemental pay through my long-term disability company, but because I was denied Social Security twice, they decided to terminate my benefits also. So for the last 2 years, we've had no income coming in other than my husband's, and he's a professor at Kent State University. But we took a huge financial loss to cover our mortgage and things like that, went to $0. So financially, we're a family of 6. It was very, very difficult. So I finally got my court hearing date, which was March 5th. I went before the judge and did not make a decision that day when I was there. She told me that she would make a decision in 2 to 3 weeks. The judge was very empathetic and very sympathetic to my situation. She let me explain what pulmonary hypertension is. My doctors wrote letters explaining what it was as well and why they felt I couldn't work, my pulmonary hypertension doctor and my liver doctor, because I was being referred also to liver transplant to possibly get worked up for a liver transplant in hopes that I could possibly come off of the IV pump medication. Basically, the judge 3 weeks later sent a letter that she was fully favorable in me winning my case all the way back to 2015. So now I'm at the point where I'm just waiting for back pay and I'm waiting for my first check, and it will be a huge relief because it's been financially stressful, a financial burden, and a hardship just all the way around for our family, for our marriage. It's just been quite the struggle. My advice, if I could do it all differently, would have been to get an attorney from the very beginning. But since I worked in disability and understood the rules and the laws, I assumed I was doing everything that I could with the knowledge that I had from my career. So in hindsight, maybe things would have been a little bit different had I made sure that my medical records all were received and got a copy of all those myself to review before just having a hospital send them straight to Social Security. Or at least if you want to try it the first time yourself on that first denial, get an attorney to help you with the appeal process, because unfortunately, I think you have to be represented in order for them to take you seriously. And to advocate for yourself, I contacted my doctors and asked them to write letters explaining what my condition was and how they felt, if I could work or not, and having my doctors on my side to say, no, she should not work. She can't lift more than 10 pounds. She needs to rest through the day. She needs to elevate her feet. There's no job out there that's going to allow for that type of work environment. So, and there are some people who can work with pulmonary hypertension, and then there's some of us who can't. And unfortunately, I can't. So the best thing I could say is, like I said, get an attorney and advocate for yourself and just do your due diligence and making sure that your attorney is getting all the documentation that you need. Ask to review it, ask for those letters, and just, fight for yourself. My name is Rebecca Hamilton, and I'm aware that I am written.